Hi guys, thank you so much for signing up for our Disco Cowgirl class. I'm going to go over real quick what is in your kit. So you can either take everything out or just watch, but I'm just going to take my icing, set that aside. I have all my cookies. Our featured flavor today is strawberries and cream, one of my favorites. And then inside this little packet here, we've got our practice sheet, a fork, a scribe tool, paintbrush, some little blue stars, and some extra piping bags. Now those extra piping bags in the back here are, we do need them in class. So make sure that you really cut your holes small today. But we do need these extra piping bags, 2 of them, for the class. So why don't you go ahead and take everything out. Oh, I forgot we have little bows as well as a little jar of food coloring. So go ahead and take that out. So I just want to mention that you guys want to make sure that you have a paper towel. I like to dampen my paper towel because royal icing tends to get kind of crusty, so I just get mine a little damp there. Also, once you take your icing out, you want to give them a good massage. Make sure you have a nice sharp pair of scissors, and this is optional, but if you'd like, you can cut the tops off your bags. Don't cut too close to that tape, but I like to keep my area nice and neat, and that just helps. So I'm going to go ahead and transition here. We are going to practice on this practice sheet first, and then I will, I'll show you how to decorate. So I like to demo everything. So if you do want your cookies to look like this, I want to make sure that you watch all the steps I do on the screen. And what's great about this recording is you can pause and really take your time on your cookies. Yes, so we're going to practice with our white icing today. And there's a really specific way to cut your piping bag. So if you notice, if you look at your white bag, there's a seam. Whenever I cut my hole, I always hold that seam pointed up toward the ceiling and I center it. I'm going to cut my hole super tiny, and I don't want you to cut your guys's yet, because actually the first thing I want you to do is cut this howdy off of your practice sheet. That's what I meant to do first. We want to set this aside because we're going to practice this later on in class. So cut that off first, and then watch me as I show you the first part of this practice sheet. So the seam is facing up like I mentioned. There it is. Facing up, centered, I flatten the tip. I'm going to cut so small. I want my white icing to completely cover this black line. So I'm going to cut straight across. It's better to cut too small of a hole than too big. We do have 3 extra bags for you, but we do need 2 of them later in class. So always cut smaller. If you need to cut more, you can do the same exact thing where your seam is facing up and you flatten the tip. The way that I hold my bag is I pinch the tape with my thumb and my pointer finger, and then I roll the pod so it's nice and tight. While I'm squeezing that tape closed, because even though it's there, it won't prevent the icing from coming out the top, I'm going to put pressure with these 3 fingers. I like to hold my wrist steady, and then I start by touching my tip on the paper. I gently squeeze, and as soon as I squeeze, I lift my tip about 1 inch high and just let the icing fall on the line. And because I'm lifting high, I want to release the pressure a little before the end, and then I lay the line down. Now, if your line is breaking, that means you're not squeezing hard enough, and if it's squiggly, either you're holding your bag, your hole is too small, or you're squeezing too hard. But real quick before you start, I want to just show you how high I hold my bag. So I start by touching my tip, squeeze, lift. Oh, I gotta get in the camera. Lift. Letting the icing fall about 1 inch high. Release the pressure, lay that down. One more thing, you want to keep your tip clean. You just want to swipe it off every now and then. You don't want any crusties on those. So go ahead and pause this, and then I will show you the rest of the practice sheet. Start on those lines first and then come back to me. So for the waves and the swirls, I'm just going to start like before. Tip touches, squeeze, lift. But this time I'm looking a little bit ahead of where I want the icing to fall. And I'm going even slower, and by slower I mean I'm just squeezing a little bit less on my bag. When I'm ready to stop, I release the pressure, lay the line down, give my tip a little swipey swipe. Same thing here, tip touches, lift. Again, looking ahead of where I want that icing to fall. Squeezing just hard enough for that line to not break, release the pressure, lay it down. For the circles, I'm just going to go even slower. I touch my tip just like before, but now I'm looking ahead. I'm looking at the black line below, where I want that icing to go, really taking my time here. We do not have circles today, which is kind of nice, but if you want, you can still practice these. Release the pressure, lay the line down. And then this part is probably the most important part, and that's the heart. Because it's showing you that every point or edge or corner of your cookie, you're going to want to put your tip down. So I have a starting point, I touch, I lift, looking ahead of where I want that icing to fall, and then my tip touches, okay? And then I start where I left off. I regain control of the icing and get nice sharp edges and corners by doing it this way. All right, so go ahead and finish your practice sheet and then come back to me with your cookies. All right, now that you're done with your practice sheet, we're gonna go ahead and start our cookies. Now, I like to outline my cookies because it helps prevent the icing from spilling over. When I show you here on the screen, I am just gonna show you on one of my cookies, but when you guys go to decorate yours, you're going to outline both of your jackets and then you'll outline both of your hearts. Today's class really doesn't matter what order you go in. I'm going to start with the heart, but you can do whatever you want. I'm going to show you how to outline both of these. So I'm going to grab my purple. So the seam is facing up again, centered. I flatten the tip, and I'm going to cut a teeny tiny hole straight across. Now actually, before I cut, I just want to make sure that you know that the rest of these icings are a thin consistency. They're looser, they're gonna come out faster. So when you're cutting your bag, keep that in mind. Cut just a little bit smaller than you think you need. Again, you can adjust, but it will come out a little bit faster. So I'm just going to, I like to squeeze the air out onto a paper towel. And then we're gonna go ahead and start to outline. I touch my tip right here, and then I'm lifting just like we practiced. And I like to go as close to the edge of the cookie as I can go. Close enough, but not too over the edge where it starts to fall over the side. When I get down to this point, my tip is going to touch. And then I'll start where I left off, start again, lifting, getting as close to the edge as I can go. And I just messed up. Oh no, I just messed up, guys. It's okay if you mess up because you have this little scribe tool. All you need to do is just wipe off whatever you're not happy with. So I didn't like that line. It was messy. It wasn't where I wanted it to be, so I'm just wiping it off. You want to make sure you keep your scribe tool clean as well. No crusties on those. And just start where you left off, like it never happens. Once you're done with both hearts, you're going to outline your jacket. And I want to make sure you're really watching this one because this is a bit more of a challenging outline than the heart. So I'm taking my blue, my seam is facing up, center the seam, flatten the tip, small hole straight across, and this is how I outline the jacket. And isn't the jacket so cute? And I matched my nails to the jacket. All right, so I'm gonna start here at the top of the shoulder and by the collar, but I lift here. This is with the blue. When I get down, there's a little indent. That's where I'm gonna put my tip down, okay? And then I'll lift here, tip down, lift, tip down, and then just outline the cuff from here. And I'll do the other side. All the way down, tip touches, lift, touch, lift, touch, lift and touch. Okay. I'm really using the shape of this cookie as my guide for where I'm putting my tip down. All right, now that was the easy part. Let's see. For the jacket, I really don't want it to be too skinny of a jacket here because I want to be able to fit a bunch of fringe and stuff on here. So to do that, this little part comes out. I'm touching at this corner. You see that little corner? And I'm going to go straight up with my arm. Straight up. And now my tip touches. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Lift here and touch in this corner and go straight up. And when I put my tip down, I'm trying to evenly have it parallel to the other arm. Okay? Now, this part, I like to touch right here. I'm not touching the sleeve, but I'm right next to it, and I'm going up with a slight slant. Just the tiniest little slant. I'll do the other side. I'm leaving a tiny space between the arm and the jacket, the back of the jacket, and then I connect. So what you want to do is you want to outline all, you guys see that kind of up close? You want to outline both hearts, both jackets, and then you're going to fill them in. So I would pause this and then outline your 4 cookies and then come back to me. Once your cookies are outlined, you want to make sure that the edges, the outline crust. So it only takes about a minute to crust, but that's really going to give that extra support for that icing to not spill over. I'm going to start by filling in the heart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my hole bigger, just a little bit bigger. And the same thing here, you can always adjust your hole. You can cut more if you need to, but you're especially now going to really hold that tape closed. Now before, when we were outlining, I was having you lift your tip, right? Well, this time we're actually going to almost touch our tip to the cookie and squeeze. And as I'm squeezing, I'm going right up against that outline that I've made. I'm pushing the icing with the tip of my bag and kind of getting it nice and messy. I want to almost touch my tip to the cookie, but not quite. If I was lifting too much here, what would happen is I wouldn't be able to push the icing where I wanted it to go. So I'm just continuing to fill in, and when you flood your cookie, you have to move quickly because royal icing will crust very fast. So once I've gone around the outside, I can actually squeeze a bit harder, and I like to go as close to that last line as I can, just to try to not have to have any holes to fill in. If you'll notice, I'm not leaving any holes. I'm going to fill this in completely. If I'm having to spread this out a lot with my scribe tool, it usually means I didn't add enough icing in there. So I fill this in, and it's not smoothed out, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scribe, and if you do need to move any icing around, what you'll do is you'll hold this like a pencil and kind of push it with the point of your scribe. But because I don't have any holes, I'm just going to stab the cookie gently and give it a little shake. Jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. And now I'm slowly bringing my scribe up. And if you have any peaks, wipe your scribe off and barely touch the surface, and it should smooth out. Oops. Before you move on to your next cookies, though, you need to make sure icing isn't spilling over. If it is, all you're going to do is take your scribe and just kind of go around the edge. So make sure you check the heart and the star like to crust or like to spill over. So double check those for sure before you're moving on. Now with the blue, I'm going to show you how to flood, and then you can go back to your 4 cookies and fill all of them in. So I cut my hole a little bit bigger. I like to start at the bottom of the arm, and I'm moving quickly and jiggling and squeezing at the same time, going up the arm. I really like to kind of try to smooth out as much as I can as I'm filling in the cookie. I don't like to do a ton of work with my scribe tool. I like to do most of the work with the tip of my bag. So once I've done that, now I'm going to go around the rest of the cookie, and let's go ahead and come down here. We'll go ahead and finish the large area. Jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. Moving quickly. You want to make sure that you don't cut your hole too big because you want to have control of that icing that's coming out. There's that, and now I'll come down the arm. And fill in and jiggle as I go around the cookie. Now I'm going to give it a gentle stab and jiggle. Stab and jiggle. So go ahead and work on those 4 cookies and meet me back when you are done. All right, next up is going to be our star and our boot. Just gonna cut the end of my bag. And this is with our light pink icing. Small hole, just like before. Squeeze the air out. And let's go ahead and outline these. So I like to touch my tip here, and because this is a more curvy star, I don't put my tip down at these points. I just lift my tip until I get to each corner. Now if you want more of a pointy looking star, what you would do is put your tip down at every point. But I like this more curved look. All the way around. This pink icing is also a thin consistency. If we try to fill this icing in with what we practiced with, it would take too long and it would be bumpy and lumpy. Now with the boot, what I really want to show you here is, look at the photo. The purple of the boot, there's purple under here. I'm not going to do the purple yet because our hole is too big from flooding, but I want to leave space for that. So I'll show you what I mean. So I start here on the left side, lift up. I'm not going to go all the way down though. I want to go right about here, okay? And then I'm going to lift up, go up, and then go down, tapering down, leaving a little space at the bottom for our purple later. And I'm going to show you up close before you get started on yours so you can see the space that I've got under here. So do you guys see how I'm going to be able to come back later and add that purple there, okay? Once you're done outlining both of those, you can start filling them in. So I'm going to cut my pink hole bigger, just a little bit, and fill these in. If you want, the pink and the purple icings are very close to the amount of what you need, but I think if you wanted to do like 1 pink star, 1 purple star, you might have enough icing for that. But just make sure that you have enough in your purple for a little bit of details that we have. So if you have enough purple, if you still have some, you can do a purple star, which would be really cute. So filling that in, giving it the stab and the jiggle. And my icing is still pretty cold, so it takes a little bit longer for it to smooth out, but we'll get there. This is with the light pink. And then the boot as well. At this point, once everything's flooded, you really want to kind of either give it kind of a fan, maybe get a piece of paper and fan your cookies, or just sit back and wait a little bit for these to crust. The beauty of doing this at home is you really can take your time. I have a little table fan with me that I'm just going to put these under so that I can move a little bit more quickly through the steps. But if you don't have anything to fan your cookies, wait about 10 minutes or so before starting what I'm going to show you next. Maybe 10 or 15 minutes. This cookie set is a lot of detail. So we really want a nice crust on these in order to do that. So once all 8 of your cookies are flooded this way, you're going to let these sit. If you have a fan, maybe have a fan on them for about 5 minutes, but if you're just if you don't have a fan, I would wait about 10-15 minutes until everything starts to get that initial crust. Meet me back here once that's done. All right, once these have crusted, we're gonna move on to our jacket and our heart. Now with these cookies, we're gonna go back and forth, okay? And I'm gonna start with the jacket. Now we have a little portion cup here with food gel. Now you're gonna want to put a little bit of water in there. You wanna make this food gel pretty loose. I'm gonna take my paintbrush, give it a stir, and you want it to kind of drip off your paintbrush. This is for our little acid wash that we're doing on our jacket. So I'm mixing really, really well, and I'm just making sure that it will drip off of my brush. I'm gonna do just a touch more. Now it's better to kind of hold your fork up high. We're gonna use the fork as a tool to get these splatter dots, but I want to be really careful not to overcoat my brush to begin with, because I want to kind of test and see how much comes off the brush, making sure there's no water on it. So I'm not coating it too much because I don't want any huge drops, and I'm holding my fork about 10 to 12 inches high, and I'm going to brush my fork back and forth. And as I'm brushing my fork, I'm going to get closer and closer to my cookie. And I'm going to brush back and forth pretty aggressively. And that's how you'll do. You can re-dip if you want to add more, but that is our little acid wash on our jacket. While that's kind of drying, you can go back to your heart. Make sure that your cookies are all out of the way when you do this, by the way, because you don't want to get it splatter all over everything. But I'm going to need to rebag my purple icing because the purple hole is a little too big. So to rebag the icing, I have my extra bag and my old bag. I'm going to cut a pretty big size hole out of my old bag and insert that into my new bag. I want to squeeze all the icing out into this new bag. I don't want to leave my old bag in there. I'm pulling and squeezing this icing out. I have this empty bag. I have my new purple bag, and I'm just going to tie this in a little knot. I need a small hole for the details that I'm doing on the heart. So I'm going to show you back and forth. Feel free to pause this at any time, but I'm going to go back and forth to these cookies, and you'll know what I mean when I get there. So I'm going to do a small hole like we did in the beginning for our outlining. And this I would say is probably our challenge cookie of the day. Now I start here with my tip touching. Make sure that you test your line and that your icing's coming out nice and clean, but I'm slightly curving just ever so slightly to the bottom of the heart. And now I'll come over here, slight curve to the bottom of the heart and down. Then I'm going to do, now depending on how close these horizontal lines are to each other, horizontal, vertical, I don't know, one of those words, up and down, depending on how close they are to each other will be how big your little squares are going to be. I like to do just 2 more lines on each side. So I'm lifting and I'm looking at the line next to it just to kind of make sure I'm evenly spaced out. And then 1 more this direction. Tip down. Now 2 going on the other side. Tip touches. Tip touches. Now I'm going to go right away and do going the other way. So I like to start here. Again, just the slightest little curve going down, and now the slightest little curve up. So see how those two middle ones kind of repeated? And then another line this way. You could even do one more line this way. And this might have more lines than my picture. We'll find out. I'll just go. Yeah, it does. All right, so that is how you'll do your lines. And while those lines are drying, I'm just gonna wipe this one off right here. While those lines are drying, you can go back to your jacket and start on the outlining of your jacket. For this guy, in the photo, everything I'm gonna show you right now is blue. So you will need to rebag your blue, but I'm gonna show you in the dark pink because it's really hard to see on the camera in the blue how I do this. So I want to do it in the dark pink so that you can see it better. It's optional. I think it looks really cute with the dark pink. It's up to you what you want to do. So I'm gonna go ahead and the first two lines I do, so we're letting this crust. Now we're gonna come back to the jacket and do the detail lines. So I'm gonna do lines from the shoulder to like this little armpit area and the other side. But like I said, this is in blue in the picture, which you would have want that rebag to be done. Or you can even do it with this dark pink. I'm doing the cuff lines, leaving a little space for the bottom detail of the cuffs. And then I'm gonna do some lines down the arm. So my tip touches right here. Lift up, go down the middle of the arm, all the way down. And I'll do the other side as well. Then I'm going to do a line down at the bottom of, not quite all the way to the bottom of the jacket. I'm leaving about a ½ inch, ¼ inch or so space. And then I'm going to add lift here. My tip touches right in the middle of the jacket and then goes back up to meet this part of the little curve. There's a line here and one more line here. And then the last two lines, see why I'm doing this in pink. It's just so much easier to see. But I think it's really cute in either way, either the blue or the pink. And then you can go back to your disco ball while that is crusting. And we're gonna start filling in little squares. This is my favorite part. So I would recommend starting with 2 colors. I'm gonna start with my purple. So I'm gonna do, you want this to be nice and puffy. But I'm just gonna fill in a square. You basically don't want to fill in squares that are touching directly next to each other. So you can be cornered, the corners can touch each other, but you don't want the whole square to be touching each other. So then I'm gonna go, let's see, I'm kind of not following the pattern that's in the photo, but a lot of people did this differently than I did in the picture, so we're just going to go for it. So I'm going to start with the purple and the blue. So see how these are not touching each other. I want them to crust. They only need about a minute or two to crust in between. Let's go with right here. So it's okay if this corner, this purple corner is touching the blue corner. And let's go right here too. And that'll give this, as I'm waiting for this to crust, I can go back to my jacket and add my little fringe. My little fringe, I'm going to use the white. Our white is already open. I like to start with the middle, and I'm going to go straight down, and my tip is going to touch. And I'm just going to leave a little bit of a space in between each line, and as I'm making these lines, they are getting a little shorter as I go up the jacket. I want to add layers because if I were to add as much fringe as in the photo and just keep going on top of these while the base is wet, they would just kind of melt into each other. So I'm just going to add some lines first, let these crust, and then add more lines after about 2 minutes, kind of like, and that's what I mean, how you guys can go back and forth to the jacket. So by the time you're done with your 2 cookies, you can go back to this guy here and fill in some other colors. You can use white or pink here. I'm just going to fill in some more sections. And the only color that's a little bit more on the difficult side is that dark pink because it's a thicker consistency. So I'm going to show you what I mean here. So this one, you do need to kind of really puff it up. So I fill this in. It's not going to smooth over just because it is such a thick consistency. And I just sort of jiggle and jiggle until it's smoothed out. You can also use your scribe tool to do that. But we're actually going to finish our first cookie here. Then I'll show you how to finish your jacket. And then we'll get to the other 2 cookies. And so you'll keep going back and forth here. And there's our little disco ball. I love it. Go back to the jacket. I've been doing 3 layers of fringe. So actually I do need to let it crust for another couple minutes. So I'm going to show you the other 2 cookies and then we'll go back to the jacket one last time. But now I'm just filling these in. All the way across. So it just needs one more layer. So while that last layer of fringe, not the last layer, the second to last layer of fringe is crusting, you can come to your boot and take your purple and you can outline that section here. And you're going to fill it in right away. All the way down the boot. And then while that is crusting, you can practice your writing on this little howdy thing right here. So I'm actually going to cut my hole just a touch more for this writing. And I recommend writing on this a few times. You can wipe it off and redo it. And then that's when you'll do it to your cookie once you're more comfortable. And you don't have to write howdy, but I'm going to show you how I do it. So I touch my tip. I am almost dragging my tip, squeezing at the same time. Okay, lifting here, squeezing, almost dragging, lifting and dragging. So once you do this a few times, you should get a good feel, but if you don't want to do it in this cursive, you can do it however you want, but you'll practice that and then you'll go to your cookie. And I'm going to show you, let's see how I do. Well, let's see, for the photo, for my sample cookie that's on the picture, I did actually use a projector, but I like to kind of have the writing in front of me as I write on a cookie if I don't have a projector. If you do cookies at home and you don't have a projector, like, you should definitely get one if you are selling cookies, because it is so helpful to get that perfect writing. There we go. That's not too shabby, not too shabby. All right, and then I'm going to show you how to finish this guy here. You guys have little stars. This is wafer paper, edible paper. I'm just going to take my finger underneath and pop out the stars. These are super yummy. If you've taken my class before, these are a little bit thicker than we normally do. So I'm just going to add 2 little baby dots to stick them on. They are so delicious though. I gave you 2 extra just in case any break, but I'm just going to place these stars on this tiny dot. All right, so go ahead, isn't that cute? Go ahead and pause. Go ahead and work on those cookies, and then you just have to look up one last time to finish your cookies. Now we finished our first cookie. I'm gonna show you how to finish our second cookie, which is our adorable jacket. We're gonna come back and we're gonna add more fringe here. All the way, so it's nice and full. We're also going to add a little detailed dots. So you can do any color. I'm going to do pink right here, but I touch my tip and squeeze to create a little baby dot on my jacket. And before you lift your tip, make sure that you release that pressure of the bag. Then I'm going to add my little bow, and I do want to show you how I made this bow, but let me show you how I apply it. This is with fondant. I wouldn't eat this. It's not like the super tastiest, but I added a little baby dot, and I'm just going to place that on my cookie. There's our second finished cookie, and let me show you how I created that little bow. So I have my fondant here. It's in a little ball, and my little fondant mold. I'm going to take some cornstarch and put a little bit on my brush and just kind of brush the area just really lightly. You don't want there to be too much cornstarch. You can also put a little bit of cornstarch on your fingers, but I'm just going to roll a teeny tiny piece of fondant here, and then I place it in the mold and I push it in, push it, but I want to be able to see the shape of the bow, so I kind of pull this fondant in so that I can see the shape of the mold, and you want to try to make it as flat as it can be. So I'm going to peel a little bit of fondant out and then push again, push until it's nice and flat and there's nothing coming out the sides. That looks good to me. So now I'm just going to peel this gently out. And there's our little bow. So fun. All right, I think we have actually one more cookie to finish. So our disco ball's done, our howdy's done, our jacket. The jacket is my absolute favorite. And now lastly is the boot. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take my pink and the line, I'm gonna make a pink line between that purple and pink of the boot, and kind of clean this up a little bit by adding a little detail line with my dark pink. Then I'm going to add a line straight down the middle. Turning the boot helps me create these little teardrop details that I'm going to add. So I start here, my tip touches, I lift, go around and touch. There's my little teardrop. Now next to it I lift and touch. And I like to start with that middle one first, and then I do the sides, kind of teardrop it. Practice this move on a paper towel before you do it on your cookie, just so you get a feel of that movement. I start with the middle. I'm looking at this middle one to kind of make sure it's in the right spot. Down here and here. All right, then I'm going to turn the boot back to normal and create just a little teeny square right at the top. Oops. And fill it in right away. So you can hold that tip close and kind of just jiggle and create that little square or rectangle at the top of the boot. And that is it. These are our beautiful cookies. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the class, and I really, really appreciate you signing up. I'm just going to hold this one and say a quick goodbye real quick. So cute. Thank you guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your month. Next month I'll be doing something patriotic. I'm still working on that. But thank you so much for your support, and I just really hope you love the class. Have a great night. Bye.